Hey everybody, welcome back to Mohawk Motors. My name is Jason. So you can see I got the frame for our silver single cab short bed moved over to the other lift. It's finally time to get this frame changed, modified, done what we need to do to it, painted, and then start putting everything back together. I don't know if we're going to get through all of it in this video, but we're definitely going to get started. Let's go. All right, guys, I've got a box full of goodies here. This is a 4.5 lowering kit from Belltech, which includes a rear axle flip kit. So we'll be moving the rear axle from below the leaf springs to on top of the leaf springs. Just going to get this truck lower to the ground. We've got some new coils and parts for the front, and new shock absorbers all the way around. I think it's going to be pretty nice, but we've got some work to do to get this going. And the first order of business is get the rear axle out and get the rear shackle hangers off. So let's get to work. All right, I'm going to start getting the parking brake cables off. These are pretty easy. Use a little screwdriver, depress the little locking tabs that poke out. Let these sit out. I'm going to try to remove this thing. Basically the axle with the leaf springs, just for sake of ease of removal. And then I don't need the axle, obviously. We put together the nice new axle for this thing. But I do need the leaf springs. Let's get these stock shock absorbers off of there. We don't need those. We don't need those where we are going. I do like to try to keep the hardware where it came from. That way I can make sure I get it back where it goes. Now, I'm not reusing this rubber brake hose in the back, so I've got it clamped off with a set of vice grips, just so hopefully it won't make a huge mess. And I'm just going to cut it. It's showing signs of its age, so even if I didn't already have the new stainless one, I would be replacing it anyhow. So on these trucks, the upper shackle bolt, it's captured. You can't get it out. You have to remove the lower shackle bolt. I'm going to get all of the nuts taken off of my two rear shackle bolt nuts and then my front spring eye nuts and get the bolts turning. And then I'll lower it down so there's no weight hanging on it and hopefully pull them right out. Nut came off, bolt turns easy peasy. Nice, that's what we want. That bolt spins easy, nice. Just for your knowledge, all of what I just did, 21 millimeters, both sides. Same at the front up here. Just want to get the nut off. know that one's free because it's starting to push out. I just want the tires like touching the ground to take the weight off of those bolts. That'll make it easy for me to slip the bolts out. Right there. Hopefully. Yeah, see? Well, maybe. That one started to go. That one came out. That one came out. Let's get a punch and knock those out real quick. Ta-da! Rear axle free. Now, just go forward enough. Now I can lift the frame right up off. Nope. All right. I'm going to ratchet strap the back section of the frame to the arms here. Roll the axle right out of the way. There we go. Now we just got to get these guys off. I think I'm going to try the air hammer. All right, I'm going to try this with the air hammer and a chisel. I've had limited success with this method, so we'll give it a shot. All right, not terrible. Man, have you guys ever seen that Pakistani truck channel? Those guys bust out rivets. I mean, I guess it is their job. But, I mean, they bust them out like it's their job. Oh, it makes my hand hurt. Come on, you're almost there. Oh, man, is my air hammer just weak? There we go. Whew. There's one. The rivets came out, that's cool. Whew. I don't know if this is better or worse than grinding. I do feel like it's faster. Definitely noisier. What's the trick here? Do you want a sharp chisel? Do you want a blunt chisel? You just need a King Kong air hammer? I feel like I see people do this in videos and on other stuff, and like it's just like rivets out. Is it just the magic of editing? Have I just been duped? Last one. Whew. All right. I think we're gonna wire wheel this off a little bit before we go any further. All right, I've got everything removed here in the back, and then I went ahead and wire wheeled it, cleaned it up. Now I'm not gonna be able to access behind the new brackets, So I'm gonna hit them with some rust converting primer just so I don't have naked steel back there. And then I'll bring you back once it's dried up and we'll get going on putting things back together. Well guys, I've spent the last hour or so sandblasting, prepping, and painting parts. So I've got the bolts that I need to reuse. They're all sandblasted and cleaned up, ready to go back on. My brackets, my new shackle brackets, they were, you know, all nice and glossy painted. I hit those in the blast cabinet real quick just to rough them up because I want to paint those the same as the rest of the frame and I want that paint to stick. So those are blasted off, ready to go. I've got my shackles blasted and painted. These are drying. And as you can see over there, the frame is, I wire wheeled the frame off. I've got all the brackets off that I needed to get off. All cleaned up, looking nice. And a coat of primer and a coat of paint on there. Just to keep it nice until I get the chassis saver put on there. So that's it. I'm out of time for today. Should be able to get back down here tomorrow and do some more. Thinking about how long things are taking and what I'm doing here, I think my goal for this video is going to be just get the rear suspension done. If I can get the rear suspension done, get the axle under here, I'll be happy with that. That'll be a good stopping point for me, I think. So that's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good morning, everybody. It's the next morning and I'm getting back to work down here. So my kit, my Belltech kit comes with new hardware for the rear shackle hangers. And these are gonna go in place just like so. Now you'll notice that there are two sets of holes drilled. The lower set here is for the 4-inch drop, and this set is for the 5-inch drop. We're gonna mount them for the 5-inch drop. And the instructions say it should clear everything on the bed and everywhere else. So we shouldn't have to do any additional cutting or anything like that. So yeah, let's get this put together. I'm gonna try to do things today in order so that I can put stuff together. And then I wanna paint these hangers and this section of the frame before I start actually hanging everything else on it. So I'm gonna get those mounted, we'll paint, and then I'll move on and do the next thing. It did come with, this is nice, grade 8 hardware with hardened lock nuts. So it's good quality hardware. I mean, I wouldn't have expected anything less from Belltech. I've always had good luck with their products. So, and these, it comes with 6 bolts because one of your shackle mounts is actually a bumper mounting bolt. And I am putting the rear bumper, well, I'm putting a better rear bumper back on this thing. I know some people like roll pins. I like the look of the factory bumper. There we go. We got 2 in. Get 2 started. I'll do the 3rd one, and I'm probably gonna put another bolt through there while I tighten these ones, just to make sure that that hole is aligned. Because it'd be pretty frustrating to bolt this thing down tight and paint, and then that hole not be lined up. The way I think I can do this without having to relocate any hardware and without having to take things apart again is I'll get 2 tight on this side to hold it in position where it's supposed to be. And we'll get too tight over here on the other side. Now this one comes back over here. All my bolt holes are lined up, and I don't have to tighten and untighten any of my locking hardware, because that is not ideal. Well, I've spent the last about 3 hours doing boring stuff, but I've got most of the rear section of the frame painted. Now, I haven't done all of the inside of the frame rails yet. I need to do that later, but I've got the outside of the frame rails painted. I've got my suspension components. I painted those first, so hopefully they would dry in time for me to start putting the rear end, the rear suspension back in. And yeah, it's dry. So I want to get the rear axle under this thing before I call it for the day. I've got the axle, I got it on my roller wheels, I've got all my bolts, and I've got my parts up. I even cleaned and painted the leaf springs. So, time consuming, not super exciting, but I think it's, like I've said it before, I think that's what's gonna take this up a notch above other things that you see, other trucks that you see, and I really want this thing to be, I want it to be freaking awesome. So I'm going to start putting suspension stuff together. Let's do it. So got my hardware all cleaned up like I showed you before. I've got my bolts that go here at the front of the leaf springs. Now both, in this vehicle, both leaf springs are the same, but there is a front and a back to these leaf springs. And on mine, I put a zip tie through the rear eyelet so I wouldn't forget which end is supposed to be the back one. I'm going to try to do this without screwing up my nice new paint. There we go. Front in. Bolt. Oh, that's right. Just needs to go in place for now. Same thing on the other side. One passenger side. Same thing, try to get it in here without screwing up all my nice paint. There we go. Wow, those went together pretty well. That's nice. All right, so this next part, I've never done this before, so I'm going to try and do this without screwing anything up. What I think I'm going to do is roll my axle here, right about here, and then I'm going to start to lower the lift down. As I lower the lift down, my leaf springs should slide rearward. And then as it slides rearward, it's going to get closer and closer to the axle. Now from the factory, the leaf spring perches are on top of the axle, and we're moving the leaf spring below. So my kit comes with these brackets, and these are nice beefy brackets. They're either 1/4 inch or 5/16 plate, I think 1/4 inch, and they're hefty. So as my leaf springs come down towards where they're supposed to be, or rather come up toward where they're supposed to be on the axle, I can sit these brackets on here, and then I'll use the U-bolts and snug the axle against the spring. And that should hold everything together, and then I can put my rear shackles and spring hangers on. I think that's my theory. We'll see if I can execute it as easily, or hopefully better than I can articulate it. Okay, I'm gonna start lowering. So far, so good. Leaf springs sliding back the way I thought they would. Okay. All right, now let's roll this axle forward. Try to get it where I want it. Boom. Okay. So I got my little saddles. See how this hole is offset? The hole goes over the center pin in the spring. The instructions say put that hole offset toward the front of the vehicle. So, got that one there. This one. All right, axle's positioned right over. Oh, now, here's the question though. Okay, so now, all right, so now I need to lift up the leaf springs to put the U-bolts on and hold everything where it goes. So let me grab those parts. All right, so hypothetically, now I can lift this. There we go. Woo-wee. U-bolt. U-bolt. Washer and nut. Another washer and a nut. Get another one here. All right, we're getting there. 3 out of 4. Okay. We got 4 out of 4 nuts on our U-bolts over here on this side. Now I think I'm gonna grab a ratchet and just give those a little hand snap. Ooh, almost got ahead of myself, team. We have a pinion angle shim that needs to be in here. So, can I fit it in without taking it back apart? Nope, I cannot. Now the shim needs to go between the spring saddle and the spring. There we go. All right, I've got all 4 bolts, all 4 nuts started. I've got the shim in place, the saddle where it belongs. And I don't think I've screwed up any of my paint. So we're doing all right. Here we go. Side number 2. We got our shim. Goes there. Then our spring saddle. 3 bolts we can hang over. Now, we've got our nuts and washers. We've got our plate. Now we lift this up where we need it. Then we start putting nuts on the U-bolts as quickly as we can. It definitely helps when we drop the nut. Alright, we got something there. This one. Okay. Oh, definitely easier on the second side. Oh, hot dog. Much easier on this side. Woo! Uh-oh. That's better. There we go. Spoke just a little too soon. Okay. Alright, that should hold everything where I want it. Now let's lower this thing down a little further. Whoops. Oh, there we go. Self-clearance. Perfect. And lower it far enough. I believe we can. Instructions say to actually put the shackles backwards. Factory configuration, I don't know if you can see it here, but it has an arrow marked front. Now, the instructions want us to put it this way. So that's what we're going to do. Slide that through. Oh, wait. Goes the other way. Yep. Boom. There we go, there's that one. Oh, I just remembered I have to modify the upper shackle bolts. Give me a minute. All right, so these other bolts, they have a little hex pilot on them from the factory, and that pilot, it's too long. So I just cut the pilot off, not a big deal. So now I should be able to slide my bolt through. There we go. Put the nut on the inside. Bam, that one's good. Same thing over here. Oh no! Guys, if you want to be a millionaire, come up with an anti-seize that doesn't spread like magic. Man, oh man, does that stuff spread. All right. We got all our bolts in. Now we should be able to lift it up, and hopefully the axle, the saddles, all that stuff should sit down nicely together, and then we can snug up these U-bolts. That side looks good, and that side looks good. Out, darn standing. Woo! Okay, let's give it one more check. Never hurts to check again. This side in position, looks good. This side in position, looks good. Thing to remember here is, unless I've made a terrible mistake, which, knock on wood, I read the instructions, I'm pretty sure I followed them correctly, we should not need to take this apart again. But, while we have it up, let's do our shock extensions. We're gonna have to do the shock extensions later, guys, I'm out of time. Boo. Well, everybody, it's a little while later. We had a nice afternoon together, but now I'm back. I'm gonna get this finished up. So I'm doing my shock extensions. This is really quite simple. This little extension bracket slips underneath. They provided a bolt that goes through. We put a little spacer collar inside of here, so I don't just crush the bracket when I tighten the bolt. Washer on this side, and lock nut. And they did provide a torque spec for these bolts of 100 pound-feet. Oh, darn it. Oh, there we go. Same thing on this side. This side's a little bit crushed. That should do it. Yeah, there we go. Whoops. Use this hammer here. A couple little tippy taps. There we go. All right. Get this side torqued. There we go. All right, let me go see if I can find my shock absorbers. Well, everybody, it's sitting on the ground. It's under its own weight on the new lowering kit. And I like it. So we went for the 5-inch drop setting, and I think that's going to be right about where we want it. Still have plenty of space between the rear axle and where the bump stops will be. We'll have roughly 3-4 inches of up travel. And you know, that'll go down, it'll be a little bit less than that once we have the gas tank in, the bed sitting on it, all that stuff, but we're not there yet. Where it is right now, I think is gonna be just fine. Got the shock absorbers in. Those look to be sitting right. They're right in the middle of their travel, so I think we're gonna be good. I forgot to point out to you earlier, I put these tube caps in when I was painting. And I do those on all my trucks. I really like them. They kind of clean up the look of the frame rail for me. But more importantly, they help keep stuff out of those tubes. I'm gonna go through also once my paint is fully dried. And all these unused holes, I'm gonna put little plastic, you know, like the Christmas tree push pins. I'm gonna block all those holes with those as well, just to try to keep as much stuff out of those tubes as possible, because stuff getting in there and then getting wet and then holding moisture against them, that's what really chews them up. So hopefully, you know, we're doing all this work to paint and everything else, hopefully getting all those holes blocked off and everything else, it'll help this thing live a lot longer. Especially because it's been in the workshop for, geez, months now. So it's as dry as it's gonna get inside of there. But I'm gonna go ahead and keep painting. I mentioned earlier, I gotta get the inside of the frame rails done and some other little odds and ends spots. So I'm gonna get as much painting as I can done, and then I'll wrap up, I'll show you when I'm finished and wrap up this video. There we go. Sitting on its own weight. The rear section is completely painted. All the way around the inside of the frame rails, down in the bump stop pockets, behind the backing plates, all along the outside. This whole rear section, all painted up. Rear suspension fully installed. Now I did not tighten the leaf spring bolts or the shock bolts. I won't tighten those until I have this thing fully loaded sitting at ride height. And that's when you tighten suspension bolts. But that's good progress for this one. That whole rear section is now, I mean, aside from tightening those bolts, it's pretty much done. I gotta stick the parking brake cables on once the paint dries. And yeah, still more painting to do. Gotta do middle section, front section. I gotta blast and paint the transmission cross member. And we gotta do all our modifications up here on the front suspension. But that's gonna be in another video. That's the end of this video. I'm really happy with this. I think it looks great. Once all the paint is dry and flat, I think it'll look chef's kiss. It'll be so nice. And yeah, Hope you guys are enjoying it. I'm pumped to see this thing done. It feels good to be making progress. I'm glad to have you guys here and showing you how I'm doing it. So that's it for this one. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And until the next video, everybody, take care.